Burks. I like to say I'm not a murderer, I'm not a killer. I'm a regular person like everybody in this room. I'm not gay as what the prosecutor want me to be. Not a gang member. I love sports. I'm a people person. I didn't intentionally meant to kill the guy about the road rage. It was a slap, not an assault. Sorry about what happened. Can't bring it back. About the doctor stuff, just because I took the plea, don't mean I did it.
Imagine waking up one morning, going about your day, and somewhere across the country, your brother, your only brother, is already gone. Not in a hospital, not in an accident, but hidden, stuffed in a carpet, tucked away in an attic crawl space like he was nothing, like his entire life meant nothing. That is what happened to Dr. Devon Hoover. And the person who did it? Someone he trusted, someone he let into his life, someone he thought he knew. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome to Shadow Crime. If you've been here before, you already know we don't sugarcoat anything here. We talk about real cases, real victims, real pain. So before we go any further, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and click that bell icon so you never miss a case. Because trust me, this one right here is going to stay with you long after you finish watching. Now let's get into it. Dr. Devon Hoover was 53 years old and a neurosurgeon based in Detroit, Michigan. Let that sink in for a second. A neurosurgeon. This was a man who spent years in school, years training, years dedicated his life to saving other people's lives. He worked at Ascension Hospital in Detroit, and by every account from colleagues, patients, and people who knew him personally, Devon was the kind of person who genuinely cared, not just about medicine, but about people. He was described as generous, warm, and deeply committed to what he did. He lived in the Boston-Edison Historic District in Detroit, one of the most iconic neighborhoods in the city, known for its beautiful old architecture and its long history of being home to some of Detroit's most prominent residents. Devon fit right in there. He had worked hard for everything he had, and he was living a life that reflected that hard work. He also had a family who loved him deeply, sisters who adored him, an 85-year-old father who was incredibly proud of his only son, and a mother who, at the time all of this was unfolding, was already seriously ill. His family was close, the kind of close where you check in on each other, where you notice when someone goes quiet, where you feel it in your gut when something is wrong. And something was very wrong in April of 2023. Devon had plans to travel to Indiana to visit his mother. She was dying, and he wanted to be there with her. That trip never happened. Devon never showed up. His family tried reaching him and got nothing. No calls back. No thanks. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel like someone being busy. The kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. So they did what any worried family would do. They called for a welfare check. And what Detroit police found inside that house on April 23rd, 2023, changed everything.
Desmond Burks to 35 to 60 years behind bars. Fox 2's Scott Wolchuk joins us live in studio. And Scott, Burks was actually smiling in court.
Yeah, it was the kind of stuff that makes your skin crawl, Roop. You know, this guy was smiling for the cameras. He really did not appear to have too much empathy for Hoover's sisters, who were giving very heartfelt impact statements. So Hoover was murdered inside of his home in Detroit's Boston-Edison neighborhood back on April 23rd of 2023. Remember, this guy's a neurosurgeon, and it's a day that Hoover's family will not forget. This investigation lasted a very long time before Burks was finally arrested and charged. Investigators allege that Burks and Hoover had a sexual relationship prior to the brutal murder. Take a listen to Dr. Hoover's family.
We couldn't sleep. We sat on the couch in silence, just praying for a miracle. And then the call came. He was gone, murdered. My only brother, my childhood companion, the one I had played with every day. The shock and horror of Devon's death turned everything upside down. 4 days after the awful realization of his murder, our mother passed away. He was strong, capable, driven, and exceptionally intelligent. He loved his family, and we knew it.
Now there is a Devon-sized hole in the middle of our family, and our hearts are forever changed by grief. I would ask if at some point you could say to our family and the Sela family that you understand how great our loss is. That would be really meaningful to us.
Look right there. So right after that passionate thing, he's shaking his head, and right about here, he's about to start even grinning, smiling right after that, you know. So now Burks also pled guilty to the manslaughter of another man, Rita Soleil, who was killed in a case of road rage. Burks did take the stand to address the court today. Take a listen to that.
I like to say I'm not a murderer, I'm not a killer. I'm a regular person like everybody in this room. I'm not gay as what the prosecutor want me to be. Not a gang member. I love sports. I didn't intentionally meant to kill the guy about the road rage. It was a slap, not an assault. Sorry about what happened, but can't bring it back. About the doctor stuff, just because I took the plea, don't mean I did it. I'm tired of them keep saying that I'm some gay killer or a gay person and a gang member in the same breath.
Yeah, 35 to 60 years in prison for Burks. Roop, back to you. What do you think?
Thinking about that family, that's quite a terrible tragedy for that sister and the entire family to have to withstand the pain. Scott Wolchek for us live tonight. Thank you.
When officers arrived at Devon's home in the Boston-Edison District, nothing looked obviously wrong from the outside. The house was quiet, but as they made their way inside, it became clear very quickly that something terrible had happened in that home. There were signs of a struggle, signs that whatever took place there was violent and deliberate. And then they found him. Devon Hoover, a man who had spent his entire career saving lives, was found face down, wrapped in a bloody carpet, hidden inside an attic crawl space. He was wearing nothing but socks. He had been shot twice in the back of the head. Twice. This was not a random act of rage. This was calculated. This was personal. Somebody had looked at this man and made a decision, and then they tried to hide what they did. Now here's where it gets even more unsettling, and I need you all to pay close attention to this part, because the timeline here is important. The day before that welfare check was called in, Detroit police had actually already been called to a separate complaint. Someone reported a white Range Rover blocking their driveway. Officers went to check it out and noticed something that stopped them cold. There appeared to be blood inside the vehicle. They ran the plates. The car belonged to Devon Hoover. Right then and there, that should have told investigators that something was seriously wrong. And it did. But by the time police connected everything and got back to Devon's house the next day, it was already too late. Devon was gone. His car was gone. His bank accounts were being drained. And somewhere out there, somebody was walking around with his belongings like nothing had happened. Now I want you all to think about something for a second. This man was a neurosurgeon. He was not naive. He was educated, experienced, and had spent years navigating high-pressure environments. So how does someone like Devon end up in a situation like this? That is the question that haunted investigators from the very beginning. And the answer, when it started coming together, was both heartbreaking and deeply disturbing. Devon had a private life. Like many people, there were parts of his personal world that he kept separate from his professional one. And within that private life, he had developed a relationship with a man named Desmond Burks. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, who exactly is Desmond Burks, and how did these two men even end up connected? That is exactly what investigators started digging into, and what they found painted a very complicated picture. Phone records pulled from Devon's device revealed that he and Desmond Burks had exchanged close to 4,000 text messages. 4,000. That is not a casual acquaintance. That is not a coincidence. That is a relationship. And according to prosecutors, it was an intimate one. Stay with me, because this is where things take a very dark turn.
A Detroit man smiling and waving to cameras before being sentenced to decades behind bars for the 2023 killing of Detroit neurosurgeon Dr. Devon Hoover, a judge sentenced Desmond Burks to 40 to 60 years in prison for Hoover's murder, along with 10 to 15 years to be served at the same time for a separate manslaughter case. 4 of Hoover's sisters and a brother-in-law spoke directly to Burks, telling him they forgive him, and they were met with smirks and eye rolls, even as they gave him a Bible. 7 News Detroit reporter Tierra Braddock in the courtroom, lifting their voices tonight.
There was a lot of emotions inside the courtroom as Desmond Burks was sentenced on Friday. For the family of Dr. Devon Hoover, this day marked a long-awaited step towards justice.
Devon's death has affected every member of our large family.
Dr. Devon Hoover's sisters filled a Wayne County courtroom on Friday to face their brother's killer.
He loved his family, and we knew it. Now there is a Devon-sized hole in the middle of our family.
Hoover, who was a prominent neurosurgeon in Detroit, was shot and killed inside his Boston-Edison home back in 2023.
One man, Desmond Burks, is responsible for our grief, our loss, and all that will never be.
Last month, 35-year-old Desmond Burks pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in the killing of Hoover. Prosecutors say Burks and Hoover had an intimate relationship, as revealed in thousands of text messages. It was also revealed that Burks sometimes charged Hoover for sex. During his sentencing, Burks was seen smiling and even rolling his eyes as Hoover's sister spoke. He had this to say when it was his turn to address the court.
About the doctor stuff, just because I took the plea, don't mean I did it.
Burks was also sentenced to 10 to 15 years for killing another man in an unrelated case of road rage. It happened in 2024 while he was still under investigation in Dr. Hoover's murder. Prosecutors say Burks punched Dearborn resident Retta Salah, who later died from his injuries. Salah's stepdaughter also spoke out in court.
Brother was one of the gentlest, most genuine men you could ever meet. He would never hurt anyone.
And after relatives of the victim said their piece, Judge Paul Cusick had this to say.
Those were some of the most profound, forgiving statements that this court has ever heard. And it's a far cry from the dichotomy that we've seen on the other side, quite frankly, and the smirks and the rolling of the eyes and making this a circus. All I have to say is, quite frankly, you are a murderer, sir. You are a killer.
At the Wayne County Criminal Justice Center, Tierra Braddock, 7 News Detroit.
Tierra, thank you.
So let's talk about Desmond Burks, because understanding who this man is key to understanding everything that followed. Desmond Burks was 35 years old at the time of Devon's murder. He had a criminal background, no steady job, and according to multiple people who knew him and later testified, he had a pattern of attaching himself to people who had money and resources and using that connection to sustain his lifestyle. Several of his former lovers took the stand and told the court that Burks never had a credit card, never had consistent income, and relied heavily on the people he was involved with to cover his basic needs. They would buy him food, pay his bills, purchase him phones, clothes, and even put him up in hotel rooms. They gave him rides. They gave him money. And Burks took all of it without hesitation. Now think about that for a moment. This was his pattern. This was how he operated. And then he met Devon Hoover, a successful, well-off neurosurgeon with a beautiful home, a Range Rover, luxury watches, and a bank account that reflected years of hard-earned success. To someone like Desmond Burks, Devon was not just a person. Devon was an opportunity. According to prosecutors, the relationship between the two men was intimate, but it was also transactional. Burks would charge Devon for sexual services. And for a while, that arrangement existed in whatever complicated space it occupied. But then something shifted. Burks, by his own admission to Detroit police, told officers that he had started developing real feeling for Devon. He called himself Devon's little boyfriend. He called himself his boy toy. And at some point, those feelings led him to ask Devon something that would ultimately set everything in motion. Burks asked Devon if he could move in with him. And Devon said no. Now I want you all to sit with that for a second. A man asked to move into someone else's home, gets told no, and somewhere in his mind, that rejection becomes a reason to take a life. That is a kind of thinking that is deeply disturbing to unpack, because rejection is something every single one of us has experienced at some point. And none of us responded by doing what Desmond Burks did, but it did not stop at rejection. Prosecutors also revealed that Devon had apparently suggested bringing other partners into their arrangement, and that this had triggered jealousy in Burks. So you had rejection layered on top of jealousy, and underneath all of it, you had a man who had been eyeing Devon's lifestyle for a long time. Because here is what happened almost immediately after Devon was killed. Burks did not grieve. He did not disappear or lay low the way someone with even a shred of guilt might. Instead, just 8 minutes after surveillance footage captured him parking Devon's Range Rover near his own home, Burks began transferring money from Devon's bank accounts directly to himself. 8 minutes. Devon's body was still in that attic, and it did not stop there. Burks began showing up at his circles looking completely transformed. The man who could not afford a credit card was suddenly flashing cash. He started calling himself Big Money Des. He was spotted wearing Cartier eyewear, and one of his lovers noticed a fancy silver watch on his wrist and pointed it out. That watch, investigators later confirmed, belonged to Devon Hoover. It was one of 2 Cartier watches stolen from Devon's home, together valued at $13,500. More than $30,000 was drained from Devon's accounts. His Range Rover was taken. His watches were gone. And Devon himself was wrapped in a carpet in his own attic. This is a part of true crime that never gets easier to talk about, because behind every piece of evidence, every dollar amount, every stolen item, there is a human being. There is Devon's father, 85 years old, try to make sense of what happened to his only son. There are his sisters, who love their brother deeply and who would soon have to stand in a courtroom and face the man accused of taking him away from them. We are getting to that part very soon. And I promise you, the courtroom moments in this case are unlike anything I have covered on this channel.
And exceptionally intelligent. He loved his family, and we knew it. Now there is a Devon-sized hole in the middle of our family, and our hearts are forever changed by grief. Devon accomplished much in 53 years, and he would have done so much more. He wanted to take each of his sisters and their spouses on a trip to Europe. He was planning for an English garden in his backyard, learning French in addition to being an neurosurgeon in the prime of Desmond Burks, is responsible for our grief, our loss, and all that will be. How shall we go on without our brother? We don't really know. But we do know a God who said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." We have found rest in the one who carries our grief and sorrow. We go on with forgiveness. Desmond, I do forgive you because I have also been forgiven of much. Jesus is a light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. I pray that you will turn to him and find rest for your soul. And we go on with hope, believing one day all shall be well. On that day, God himself will wipe away all tears from our eyes, and there will be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things will be passed away. Thank you. Good morning.
State your name, please.
My name is Linda Hirschberger.
And
Devon is my brother.
Okay, thank you for being here.
Thank you. My sister said a lot of what I was going to say, so if it's appropriate, if I could talk to Mr. Burks.
You can direct your comments to me, but obviously you can say what you want, okay?
Okay. So I just wanted to say, Mr. Burks, that like my sister said, in April of 23, it was like this bomb went off in our lives, and it was just this, like they said, a giant Devon-sized hole that will never be filled. And in the 3 years following, we have these ripple out effects. And like my sister stated, there's so many things that are we just miss, and it's the biggest loss is Devon. But I think that like some of the ripples that are the hardest are the fact that it happened right in the most painful time of our lives. And I don't know if you know that, but like that's been the thing that's been hardest for me to forgive you for, is that when we could have used Devon the most, he was the strength of our family, and he was the one who would have known how to help our mom get from living to passing and how to take care of her pain. And we needed him so desperately in that moment, and he wasn't there. And he and my mom were the strength in our family, and to lose both of them in 1 week was just astronomical. I just, that piece there has been the hardest for me to really let go of. And I just wanted to say to you, Mr. Burks, that when I sat in the courtroom earlier and I saw your mother's tears, something shifted in my heart. And I just know we're in the middle of a very broken story. And I acknowledge that I have no idea what happened in your life prior to this point. And so all the giant things that I'm losing of my brother, all the ways that I miss him, all the desires that I wish, my sister stated everything I was going to say about what we were hoping for, all that. I think just if you could, speak to us in the Sela family some sort of acknowledgement that you understand our losses. Like, I think one of the hardest things is that you act like their lives didn't matter, that somehow they were expendable. And so I stand in this place where there's a loss of Devon and there's a loss of Mr. Sela, and you're acting like it was nothing. And I think that for both of our families, if you could just acknowledge the great loss, that's so helpful to us. And I think too that my heart really grieves for you, because I see your life as a loss too. I wouldn't want for you the rest of your life in prison. I'm sure that you have giftings that were never experienced because of what life handed you. And I'm sorry that your life is going to be stuck in jail the rest of your life too. It doesn't bring me any great joy. It's just a lot of pain all in one pile. And so, yeah, I just want to say too that I don't hate you, and I'm choosing to keep forgiving you. And I would ask if at some point you could say to our family and the Sela family that you understand how great our loss is. That would be really meaningful to us.
Thank you.
Can we do the victims impact statements for the manslaughter cases while you're on, or do you want us to break those up?
No, you can do those right now. And how many do you just?
I believe it's just one.
Okay.
Victim's family has brought a Bible that they would like Mr. Burks to have, so I would give it to Ms. Silver, and so she can have the deputies. Yes, thank you.
This was brought, and that you can give it to the deputies as well, and then Mr. Burks can have that. Okay?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Can you please state your name?
Angie Saul.
What relationship do you have with Mr. Select?
He was my stepdad.
Thank you for being.
Thank you. Brother Sala was my stepfather, but to me and to so many others, he was much more than that. He was family, he was safety, he was kindness, and he was love in human form. On the night of April 17, 2023, Brother called my mom, his wife, to tell her he was on his way home from work. That call was formal. It was routine. It was the kind of call that represents stability and love, the kind that says, I'm coming home. But he never made it home. As the hours passed, fear started to set in, because that was not like him. Brother was dependable. Brother was responsible. Brother was the kind of man who showed up. My mom called. Something was wrong. Hearing that fear in her voice is something I will never forget. We called the hospital after hospital, hoping someone had seen him, hoping someone could tell us that he was okay. Found out that he was at Sinai Grace Hospital. No one called us, no one notified us, even though he had his ID on him. While we were desperately searching for him, he was laying there alone, fighting for his life. When we got there and learned that he was on his deathbed from a brain bleed caused by an assault during a road rage incident, our world stopped. The shock, the disbelief, the heartbreak. There are no words strong enough to describe that moment. Ruther was one of the gentlest, most genuine men you could ever meet. He would never hurt anyone. He was 68 years old and still worked every single day, not because he had to, but because providing for his family was who he was. That was his purpose. That was his pride. He was a father to 6 children, a grandfather to over 12, and a stepfather to 3. But more than title, he was present. He loved deeply. He showed up. He listened. He helped. He protected. Loving cousin, mother, her partner, her strength, her comfort, and now that is gone. Ruther was a God-fearing man who never missed a prayer in his life. His faith was not just something he said, it was something he lived. He treated people with patience, with respect, and with kindness. He believed in doing good, and even when the world wasn't good back. And on top of all of that, he was a caregiver for my mother, who is bedbound and on dialysis. And unfortunately, she's too sick to be here today. He took care of her every single day. He made sure she was safe, comfortable. He did that responsibility with pride and love, never complained.
Fast forward to January 2026. After more than 2 years of investigation spanning 5 states and 3 countries, after 71 officers working the case, after 87 witnesses being interviewed, after 300 pieces of evidence being collected, and over 100 search warrants being issued, Desmond Burks was finally sitting in a courtroom facing a first-degree murder charge, a charge that, if convicted, would have meant mandatory life in prison without any possibility of parole. Jury selection had already begun. 2 days in, everyone was prepared for what was expected to be a long and intense trial. And then something happened that nobody saw coming. Not the prosecutors, not the victim's family, not even his own attorney. Desmond Burks walked into that courtroom and entered a guilty plea. His own lawyer admitted it was a surprise to everyone, but Burks had made his decision. By pleading guilty, the first-degree murder charge was reduced to second-degree murder, which meant the possibility of parole still existed somewhere down the line. That plea was the only calculated move Burks made that actually worked in his favor. But here is what did not work in his favor: how he carried himself when it was time to face the consequences. On February 20th, 2026, Desmond Burks walked into that sentencing hearing smiling. Not a nervous smile. Not the kind of smile someone wears to mask anxiety. He was waving at cameras. He was throwing up peace signs. He was making comments to his attorney while prosecutors were speaking, and had to be told multiple times to be quiet. And when Devon's sisters stood up to deliver their victim impact statements, pouring their hearts out about losing their brother, about watching their elderly father crumble, about their mother who died just 4 days after learning Devon had been murdered, Burks sat there and rolled his eyes. Let that sink in. These women lost their brother and their mother within days of each other. They stood in that courtroom with more grace and dignity than most people could ever manage in that situation. And this man rolled his eyes. One of Devon's sisters looked directly at Burks and told him that the life he could have had was now gone, and that she believed the sentence he was about to receive was a fitting consequence for what he had done. In an act of extraordinary grace that left many people in that courtroom completely speechless, the family gave Desmond Burks a Bible, and he smirked. When it was Burks' turn to speak, he stood up and told the court he was not a murderer, not a killer, and that just because he took a plea did not mean he did it. He also referred to the road rage killing of 67-year-old Rita Sala, a gentle and deeply religious man who died after Burks punched him and left in the street, as nothing more than a slap. Judge Paul Cusick had heard enough. He looked at Desmond Burks and said plainly, "You are a murderer, sir. You are a killer. You pled under oath to that, and that is your sentence." Burks was sentenced to 35 to 60 years for Devon's murder, a consecutive 5 years for the weapons charge, and 10 to 15 years for Rita Saleh's death, with a mandatory minimum. Burks will not be eligible for parole until he is at least 80 years old. As he was let out of the courtroom, Burks mockingly repeated the judge's words back to him, and then added that if he were white and Devon were black, nobody would care. Devon Hoover saved lives for a living. He showed up every single day for his patients, for his family, for his community. And in the end, the person who took his life was someone he had personally let in. So here is what I want to leave you with today. What does it say about a person that they can sit in a courtroom, watch a grieving family fall apart, and smile? What does it say about the way we sometimes overlook warning signs in the people closest to us? And what do you think justice actually looks like in a case like this, where a man will likely die in prison, but two families, Devon's and Rita Saleh's, still go home empty-handed every single night? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because I genuinely want to hear from you on this one. If this case moved you, if it made you think, if it made you feel something, hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed to Shadow Crime with the bell icon turned on so you never miss a case. We cover the stories that deserve to be told, the victims that deserve to be remembered, and we do it every single week. Devon Hoover deserved better, and the least we can do is make sure his story is never forgotten.